They came down from Minnesota. They settled on their claim. They weren't in search of fortune, and they didn't look for fame. They wanted a piece of land that they could call their own. They wanted to raise a family where the seeds were sown. Since they made their trip over 100 years ago, they would still be happy, because this is where plants grow.
They came from the Alsace-Lorraine, which were mountain areas, and they came from that area, and they would be in Germany one time. It was called Germany, and the next time it'd be French, so there evidently was a little bit of political things going on that probably forced them to come over. And then when they started down to Nebraska, he wrote that he had a wife, 6 children, a wagon, horses, a half sack of flour, a half bushel of potatoes, and 35 cents. And he started out with all that in a wagon and a horse. We lived on the Oregon Trail because we're like a mile and a half away from the trail. And so there was a lot of traffic going back and forth on that trail. And some of the Indians were friendly and some of them were not, and that's why so many were killed during the Oregon Trail years. But he and his wife were able to establish a rapport with the Indians, and so they weren't ever killed.
You know, it's one of those deals, in agriculture, in rural America, we are survivors. And I think we've instilled that in our family that, you know, do what you can to survive, but, you know, don't make any enemies doing it. You know, because no matter who you are or where you're at, you're always going to need help from somebody someday. You know, they weathered the 30s and came out of it, were able to hold on to ground. And by doing that, you know, there was some stories told that one farm was bought with egg and cream money out of a cream can out of the cellar because their family didn't trust banks because they'd lost so much in the banks. Farming's been in my family for as long as I can remember. My granddad farmed this place, my dad did, and I am now, and I have kids and grandkids upcoming that I hope that'll be farming the same operation. Just keep passing it down the lines. You sit here by the big tractor. Come here.
Get up there.
Look at that. I got it.
Big tractor.
Yeah, that's a big tractor.
Then Mike came in. Well, he was kind of like Aiden, about a half a step behind his dad. That's where I used to find him, was down in the cattle pens, because I couldn't find him anywhere, and a lot of times he didn't come. The dog came, but he didn't come when I called. And you'd look underneath, stand and look at the cattle. Well, there were always 2 little legs walking somewhere in there, and you'd know where Mike was. He was, or he'd sit up in the manure spreader in the pasture north and watch them combine.
I started farming in '78, shortly before I graduated. My dad and I had a chance to rent the neighbor's farm, and we put it in Bill and Mike Schlick's name. My dad passed away suddenly in '93. I was thrust into the position of having to make all the decisions and kind of grew up fast. I'd already been out of school for a fair amount of time, but grew up fast and, you know, had to lean on stuff that Dad had taught me along with my schooling. And, you know, it was a rude awakening, but, you know, I've made it through.
Now, Bill lost his dad in a car accident, so that ended Everett's farming. And then we lost Bill, and they were both 68 when they passed away, and that's young for farmers. But I still like farming. I like living in the country. I like the activities, love to hear the cows, and I'd do it all over again if I had to.
The history of agriculture is rich and deep, and, you know, it's something that needs to be preserved. It wasn't always sitting in an air-conditioned tractor cab watching your iPhone. It was out, it was dirty, it was hard work, it was, you know, at the end of the day, you were shot. It wasn't because you were shot just tired of sitting in the seat. It was very physical. And it was a tough life in the old days. You know, things may be hard today, but we're fortunate that the physical labor isn't nearly as hard as what it used to be. Well, it's a kind of an honor to be able to keep farming the ground that we've had. The ground that we're sitting on today has been in the family for 100+ years now. I'm excited to see the new generation coming into the farming operation. We got grandkids and kids that are actively involved in agriculture, and I'm glad that I'm around to see them pursue the careers.
The changing of the guard means exchanging of the ground from one generation to another for new talents to be found. For this land is important. It is much more than just soil. It is where we raised our family. It is where we still toil. The ground beneath our feet has been a source for life. It has taught us to be patient. It has taught us to be wise. But it hasn't made a fortune, and it doesn't have fame. But its value is undoubted, for it has the Schlick name.